being recorded.
Welcome to the OpenJ9 community call. If you haven't already, this is a reminder to put your name and company affiliation into the minutes. So under lightning talks, we've got nothing scheduled. Is Sue on the call?
Yes, I am.
You had mentioned possibly doing a talk on the website at some point. Do you know when you'd like to do that?
I think we're close. Whether it's next week or not, I'm not sure. I was going to reach out to you and the other project leads to talk about it a little bit more this week or early next to see when it might be right. We've got some gaps I think we'd like to fill before we do it.
Okay. Next up is updates from recent conferences or user engagements. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about? Nope. Okay. User raised issues. So there have been quite a few in the last week. Exit on out of memory error, not exiting. So Teresa is looking into that one. There's a crash in the JIT, which I believe has already been fixed or at least partially fixed. And the user is asking for us to create a new release, 0.18.2, to fix that. The problem being that they have a release that works that has all the latest security fixes in it. So I think that's in the agenda later on. So we won't talk about that now. Transparent huge pages causing a performance issue. One user had to turn it off. Seems to be related to having an older kernel version that has a bug in it. So there's a question of whether the VM should automatically detect whether the kernel is the right one or not, depending, and not enable transparent huge pages unless the kernel's working properly. So that's still under discussion. Incompatible class change error. I know Jason's looking at that one. Sorry, was somebody saying something?
I was going to say, for the transparent huge pages issue, it only occurs on a machine that's running a lot of containers or has a lot of C groups active, because there's an n-squared algorithm that causes the issue when trying to dig up the transparent pages. So I'm not sure it's something the VM can detect, because it takes more than just a particular kernel level. It takes load of a particular kind on the machine to cause the issue.
Okay.
I think we may end up closing this.
All right. But for the time being, I did go through before the meeting and I assigned most of these to milestones just so we wouldn't lose track of them. Closing it or resolving it, whatever. Product crashes at startup when upgrading from 13.01 to 13.02. I believe that's a dupe of a shared classes problem that Erwin has been looking at. So he's trying to get a Windows build that has debug symbols so he can continue his investigation. And then crash and adopt OpenJDK. I don't remember what that one is. All right, okay. So we're discussing this one in the original issue that's opened at adopt. So somebody's running a small example program, seen here, and it just exits. It doesn't crash, like there's no GPF messages or anything printed. There's no diagnostic files produced. It just stops running. So trying to gather various logs and figure out what's going on. It worked in an older VM and started exiting in a newer VM. So unless somebody has comments, I think we've assigned all these to milestones and they're all under investigation. What's next? The phantom references in queue has been in the minutes for a while. I'm not really sure why it's there. Do you know why it's listed, Dan?
I think it was listed at the same time we were looking at the default GC heap sizes as another potential GC issue we should be talking about. Discussion has continued in that item. I think we can remove it from the minutes as the discussion has been happening in that issue.
Okay. Something that came up a few weeks ago is a request for a Windows 32-bit JDK 11 build at Adopt. And I believe the answer, this has been asked before, and the answer was no, because 32 bits is not supported by JDK 11. So unless you have another opinion, Dan.
I continue to prefer not to add support for 32-bit, especially since it's becoming harder and harder to find 32-bit systems. Is there a particular use case driving this?
So I did respond to the who raised it at Adopt, saying that because it's not supported by OpenJ9, that's the place it would need to start, and suggested he should raise an issue at Eclipse OpenJ9 if he's serious about this. I did ask him what his use case was, and it was just generally we'd like to be able to run Java 11, JDK 11 also on all these old machines we've got. So since I don't see an issue having raised the Eclipse OpenJ9, I imagine at the moment he's not serious enough to want to put you through all the pain.
I thought he had raised an issue.
Oh, sorry that I missed it. I did glance, but
I thought I saw it, but I thought his use case was that his wanting to move all his customers from 8 to 11, and a hunk of them are running on 32-bit. So they didn't want to force their customers to change. That's why he was looking for 32-bit 11.
But I could only find one version of Windows that was even 32-bit and still in service, which was a Windows 8.1, and that for not much longer. So.
Yeah, my concern here is, the additional test burden, the additional burdens at releases, and the message we have consistently pushed has been that JDK 11 is not 32-bit. So my preference.
There's also the issue that if OpenJDK isn't supporting 32-bit platforms, then there's no way to get problems in OpenJDK fixed if it happens to reside there. Right?
So the OpenJDK story is a little bit funny in that they are, all of their tier 1 platforms are 64-bit. I believe there are still others who are supporting sort of tier 2 platforms that may or may not be 32-bit, but there's no guarantee that any new piece of code delivered in that release would continue to work.
If I remember correctly, Adopt does provide a 32-bit build for Hotspot.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, that's correct.
For JDK 11?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Potentially, we're just hurting OpenJ9 by not having an OpenJ9 build. If it does stop being supported by OpenJDK, then I guess we won't be able to support it anymore for OpenJ9. But
Amusingly, I just Googled for OpenJDK supported platforms, and nothing on the first page is actually OpenJDK. So Adopt OpenJDK, OpenJ9, Red Hat. Sorry to cut you off there.
That's because we're more important than everyone else, clearly.
well, Sounds like it's still a no for now. Do we want to leave it in the minutes to think about it some more, or?
One of my largest concerns, besides the OpenJDK code continuing to support 32-bit, is build and triage, and the resources necessary to support an additional platform. So
does Microsoft provide any resources for that sort of thing? Probably not.
I don't know why they would want to encourage 32-bit at this point either. It might be worth leaving it on the agenda for another week for people to continue to think about, or if there's an outcry from user communities that desperately large enough contingent of users that desperately want this and are willing to help step up with the build and triage.
Still can't see an Eclipse OpenJ9 issue. Adam, if you could find that, if we could get it in the minutes, that might help.
Yeah, I'll try and find where they saw that.
One to adopt has been closed.
It was opened historically. It's not actually connected to this particular request. It does sound familiar.
So the next one should be 082. So this is unexpected bytecode and thunk archetype, which was at least partially fixed already. And the user was requesting the user is requesting a 0.18.2 release to include this fix, saying the impact is large, they can't move up, and therefore they're not able to get the January security fixes.
One of the key pieces of information to me is the last question in this, and is there a option-based workaround at this point? Can they disable the interpreter emulator to be able to move up and still have security fixes without hitting this problem? I don't see Yi on the call. Is there someone from the JIT team who's familiar with this code who could comment on that?
Just looking at, I'm not responding to that question, but just looking at the symptoms here, we do seem to be suffering from this on the latest test runs that adopt OpenJDK for JDK 14.
We shouldn't be, because that problem was supposedly fixed. So the fix should be in the Java 14 builds.
I'm only going off the hex code that is somewhere at the top of the dump.
Are you seeing it in the milestone 1 build?
Yeah.
That's not good. So maybe it's not really fixed.
You send a link to the failures or stick them on Slack, and
Yeah, sure.
it would be good to dig into that.
So there seems to be two things that are hitting users. One is this one, and the other one is the crash, the shared classes crash, although there is a workaround, X shared classes none, that can be used for that one. If we were going to do a new release, it would be nice to fix both of these issues. But I guess there's no point in talking about a release until we actually have a proper fix.
Yeah, I think we should postpone this discussion for another week then.
Andrew, did you have a chance to update the download trends?
I did, yes. They're the latest as of today.
Looks like everything's continuing to trend as it was before.
Yeah, trend as per the last month's trend, yes. So our percentage share is going down, but I think that's because the those, whatever the Docker pulls were, have now stopped. So we're back to what was our previous normal rate, as it were.
Looks like there might be a slight upturn at the end in some of them.
There is a slight wiggle upwards, isn't there? Just a slightly lesser downhill slope.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's looking good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had an action item to follow up with the Adopt community regarding the Docker Hub polls, and I did have a conversation with George. Docker has shared a bit of information there, but not enough to be able to really identify how, identify where those polls were coming from. Just looking for my notes on that, because I believe the feedback was that they thought this was legitimately different IPs pulling things. So this was possibly a single CI environment gone insane, doesn't match the data they were able to share. They indicated this was multiple IPs and a broad range, but no actual data that we can look at.
Did you say?
I was just saying, does that imply that they actually broke down the downloads? If they said, or they said that there wasn't a unique one that was doing lots, I guess is what they determined, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Did you say this is coming from Docker Hub?
Yes. Secondhand data from Docker Hub. So there was Docker Hub had a discussion with Adopt, and I had a discussion with the Adopt members. So all this information is secondhand.
Okay. So now might be a good time to discuss how we're going to advertise our milestone builds, since we're working on a milestone 1 build for Java 14, although considering it doesn't have any of the features that we're looking for in Java 14, maybe we don't want to advertise this one. Any thoughts?
I think it's still worth advertising from a test it, try it out. And hopefully we would find any user-raised issues like the interpreter emulator issue we've been tripping over with the last release before it goes out.
So if that is still occurring in the milestone 1 build, would we look at fixing it and doing a milestone 2 build quickly?
Hold off on that for a second. I haven't found it again yet. I've been looking at many test results in the last 48 hours. I might have got confused.
Okay. Hopefully, because it's supposed to be fixed. Do we have people that can post at Reddit? Dan, I think you're able to tweet it, right?
Yeah, I can tweet it from the OpenJ9.
Slack is easy. The mailing list we can do. I don't know if there's other places that we can advertise it. We could poke Liberty. Anybody have other suggestions? Okay, well, we'll do what we can once we have the milestone build confirmed. Are there any updates on the notarization? It seems like the builds aren't necessarily working. Somebody open an issue, say they try to run Eclipse with the 0.18.1 OpenJ9 release and they can't run Eclipse.
So from what I've read, the current problem is JDK 8 only, I think. And George is, from what he's documented in the issue, is talking to Apple to try and understand. It's to do with the level of the Xcode used to build OpenJDK 8.
Okay.
The issue you refer to, what version is that?
Let me find it. I thought it was 11, but maybe not.
Yeah, it is 11, the one that got raised at adopt in the support channel.
I mean, the thing is, if that's the GA level, then I thought we were under the impression that builds from before the time of the enforcement would be okay. That sounds like that's not the case.
So the complaint is that 0.17 works, 0.18 doesn't on Catalina. Shelley referred us to this issue at adopt.
I just updated the minutes with it.
So there's something about it's going to be fixed in 11.07, which means people won't be able to use Mac builds on Catalina until April.
I hadn't realised it actually broken between 11.05 and 11.06. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is a bit odd.
Yeah, so it looks like that upstream fix has landed, so they should get those in nightly builds then.
If that is the case, then it's probably worth asking the user if they can
Try a nightly?
try it nightly. Yeah. Presumably, this is not specific to J9. Is that correct, Shelley?
Yeah, it is not specific to J9.
Actually be a problem with the specific version of Catalina. Changes introduced with Mac OS 10.15 cause certain Java applications to behave incorrectly.
I believe the issue, reading through some of the linked bug reports, is related to replacing a symlink with an actual binary. Why that causes the problem, I don't know. So anything that has symlinks to be notarized on Catalina would need to replace them with an actual binary.
Is there a newer version of Catalina, Mark?
Not that I know of.
So once people are using this level, they need to get a newer build of Java that works, right? They can't upgrade their OS or anything?
Yeah, there have been dot updates. I think 10.15 corresponds to Catalina. So I'm currently running 10.15.3.
Yeah, that's the one that this person was using as well.
Commenting on, yeah, I think it's the latest. Yeah, it's interesting. For the last month, I've been focused on doing runs on a Linux machine, so I haven't done as much runs on my laptop itself. Might have dodged the problem. Right.
I don't know that there's anything left. I'm gonna delete most of this stuff. One. So Java 14 coming up quickly. There's still a lot of things in the milestone list. All the newer features are still in the milestone list. There's quite a few crash problems. Maybe I'll bring it up. So 35 open issues. So JEP support. Problem with overhead heap profiling, a feature that was added in a previous release, is not working right. I believe that was under investigation. Perf issue. Doesn't seem to be actively being worked. This is 292 perfwork that's ongoing, I think, right? So maybe this just be moved to a future release.
I think this one is J profiling related, which is the new profiling mechanism.
That's right. It looked like it was waiting for, we were hoping that Charlie would try it out. How I interpret the last couple of comments in there. Oh, actually, no, I misinterpreted. Okay. Charlie was hoping to try it out. We told him he could, but then we didn't hear anything after that.
Crash and it's tagged against the VM. This one here, you know, the investigation is ongoing, the verify problem. Null pointer exception in the JIT, from the JIT. OpenJDK test failure related to JDK 14. XMX rules for JDK 8. PR testing is running on that one. Hopefully that'll go in soon. I'm not sure what's happening with the migration story. I suspect we're going to move that to the next release because we've already branched for Java 14. The collection usage threshold of memory pool. Dan, I think you were running some PR testing. Is that right?
Launched PR testing. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
So it looked like it was good. So hopefully this one will go in. Would you put it into Java 14 or would you just go into the 0.20 release?
At this point, given that we've missed the decut on this, I might just put it into the 0.20 release.
Okay, done.
Be good to get that merged, so I will click the button.
So where were we? Checking packages in the unnamed module. That's a PR. Hopefully that can get in, but maybe deferred to the next release.
Yeah, so I need to connect with Teresa on that. There was a significant performance overhead with the initial approach. I need to confirm that I'm able to work around that.
Yeah, okay. I haven't seen any recent updates. Windows print throws array index out of bounds exception. JIT. BSTRS support. Maybe that needs to be moved out since it didn't make the branch for 019. Segmentation error. Not sure what this is. So I think we need to take a close look at what all these things are and move some of them out for sure. GPF with Lombok is used. Did that get passed to the JIT and then came back to the VM, or it doesn't seem to have a component assigned to it?
That one doesn't ring any bells. I'll have to dig into that. It did, yeah, it does look like it came back and fell off my list. So apologies there. I'll have to get someone to dig further in.
Crash running micro profile. Performance of Minecraft. I think somebody was looking into that one. Add package to list. I don't think we could recreate that one. JIT support for object input stream read string. I think that's a perf optimization. Probably move that one out. Updating OpenSSL. We'll just check. I think we're still at the latest version. The crash that Erwin's looking at. JEP 370 is in progress. Crash after creating large objects. I think there are some questions there. GAC pointed his finger at the JIT, and then the JIT said it's crashing the interpreter. This one I'd like to get merged into the branch. Got merged into the headstream late. Some internal test problem with ASM. But we fixed all those. And then interpreter emulator must implement all bytecodes. That's a continuation of the same one that the user was requesting a 0.18.2 update for.
Yeah, the approach suggested here is to fail the compilation rather than bringing the VM down for any bytecode that can't be supported there.
Okay, well, I'll go through these again after the meeting and move a few of them out to 0.20, but I think we need to take a look at some of the ones that are still in here. Did anybody confirm the website is updated at Adopt for large heap builds for P-Linux and Z-Linux?
Yeah, I believe that was confirmed in a previous meeting.
There we go, large heap. Large heap. Hopefully for 11 as well, so I'll remove this. Brings us to the Adopt update.
Yeah, nothing, no movement on that first point. I suspect now that Martin will be back in our time zone, we'll meet with him and can poke him on that JavaDoc issue. Thanks, Simon, for enabling testing on the JDK 14 nightly builds. Based on the last release, the retrospective we had, we've done a bunch of updates to TRSS to make it hopefully easier to triage a release and to view what's going on. Some of the updates include a dashboard banner, a button to help gather all the information in one issue. So it'll actually, if you click on the Git button, it'll raise an issue with a template pre-populated with all of the stuff from the release, all of the fails. We also have added a link for searching for existing related issues. So it's preliminary at this point. It'll make assumptions like if this is a failure in an OpenJ9 run, it will go and look in for related issues in the OpenJ9 repo, and alternatively look in the OpenJDK tests repo for related issues. So it needs work, but the initial link is there, and we'll have to add some extra sophistication to it. Ability to add comments is there now too. So if multiple people are triaging, they can add a comment to the test result to say either I'm looking at it or to put a link to other things to leave a trail for other triagers to know about. We also re-enabled streaming. This is so that if you launch a pipeline at Adopt and AIX takes 6 hours to complete, but everything else is done. As test jobs complete, now the TRSS view will be updated. We've added also a feature where you can enable or disable based on Jenkins server. So we're going to leave that disabled for the OpenJ9 Jenkins server because it's incompatible with the restart feature that is in the build pipelines at OpenJ9. Perf improvement also, so it was getting quite slow to load the by pipeline view. We've updated it so that it's quite quick now because it'll only update the first page. As you scroll to the next page or next page of older pipelines, it'll load as you go. So we won't bother loading things that aren't in that first view. And then finally, grabbing test results in the event test stage completes but post stage fails. This seems to happen fairly frequently. Tests complete, but the post stage in Jenkins may not. So TRSS will still grab the results and display them, which will be helpful if we keep hitting that problem. And thanks to the infra folks, Stuart and Haroon, they're in the process of moving TRSS, the external instance, over to a machine that won't go away at the end of each subscription term. We lost our instance for a couple of days because of this. And I don't know if Stuart maybe has anything else to add.
Yeah, it's kind of on those last two things. GCC 7.5 has been installed on everything apart from x64 because of a known issue that we have on x64 and protobuf. And interestingly, on the ARM64 stuff, it looks like the last few builds have failed for some reason. I think it's at the end of the build where it tries to run Java minus version. It seems to be blowing up quite spectacularly. So we need to look into that, I think, unless the OpenJ9 team are aware of any issues already.
Not sure.
Yeah, this is we're still only just running the XL builds at the moment. I know the non-large heap builds should be okay to enable now, but we haven't done that yet. So this is the large heap build specifically that's blowing up.
So about the GC 7.5, the protobuf issue has been resolved at OpenJ9 today. I'm hoping to turn GCC 7. Well, I can turn GCC 7.5 back on anytime, I think.
Okay, I can stick the new one on there then. Is that the removal of the protobuf dependency completely, or some other fix that's gone in?
Protobuf was recompiled with GC 7.5.
Okay.
We are going to remove protobuf completely, but that's going to take some weeks before that gets merged.
Okay, understood. So I would need to rebuild protobuf with 7.5. It's currently built with 7.3 on our machines, I think. But so I would need to rebuild that on the Adopt machine as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure why having it built with 7.3 didn't work. I suppose you could try the one you already have and see if it fails for you the same way it failed with J9.
I think it did. Certainly there was an issue at the linking stage. I don't know if it was exactly the same error message, but it was certainly within protobuf.
Yeah, so what happened at OpenJ9 was you would run minus version and you get a message about an undefined symbol in the JIT library.
Okay, I think this was failing before that, if I remember rightly. Okay, I might leave it at 7.3 just now and then leave it until next week because I'm out for a couple of days.
I remember you did report a compile error in OMR.
Yeah, that was different. That was yeah. Let's ignore that one.
Okay.
That's not an issue.
Okay. Good. Any updates on OMR? Any updates on machines?
I suppose only that at Adopt OpenJDK we do now have Windows Server 2019 machines that we can test on, which we haven't had previously.
Is Adam still on? So we are working on DDR issues on AIX to try and get our additional AIX compile machines back online. Not sure. Approving renewals for machines. Hopefully we can renew our AIX machines or we won't be doing any more builds. The disk usage came down even more yesterday, I think, or the day before, which is good. So Adam was working on a fix to the way we run builds on Jenkins to hopefully fix our Jenkins restarts that occur if you run too many builds at the same time. So we'll see how that goes. Also, it's secondary priority, but we're looking at a second Artifactory at UNB to avoid problems with downloads at UNB. But the Jenkins, fixing the Jenkins problems are higher priority than this one, so I think it's moved to the back burner temporarily. What's this about the website? Did anybody want to comment about the website? No, so everybody can read what's written in red here. New home pages and about pages in progress. And then we might have an update from Sue, a lightning talk either next week or the week after. Any other business besides creating blog posts about upcoming events?
Just to go backwards a bit about the defect for the 0.18.2 release, I've gone through the JDK 14 results that are underway. I must have hallucinated that failure from somewhere else. So I have no evidence that the fix wasn't good.
Okay, thank you. So does the milestone 1 build still need additional triage, or does it look good to publish?
So there's still some builds underway, so the tests haven't finished. But what I've looked from the ongoing logs, there are quite a few crashes, but they all seem to be related to JSR 359 not being fully implemented.
Yeah, okay.
And then there are a few other bits of things that we'll need to raise, but it doesn't look like anything that fundamental that would affect a user.
Yeah, if it's related to JEP 359, I wouldn't bother raising anything because we haven't finished delivering the feature.
Yep.
Okay, if there's nothing else, thanks everyone. Talk to you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.